Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome back to another professional match of Zerg versus Protoss. What I got for you today is a match between France and Germany, spawning here in the bottom right hand corner of Backwater LE and playing with the blue Protoss probes. We have none other than ShoWTimE, and of course he is going to be our German Protoss, and his opponent spawning all the way in the opposite corner of the map. He's playing with the beautiful pink Zerg drones. We are currently looking in the main base of our French Zerg player who goes by the name of Stephano. Now Stephano, of course, in particular a couple of years ago, easily one of the most successful non-Korean professional gamers in StarCraft 2 of all time. And I actually recently did a cast of Stephano as well, and I noticed a lot of people commenting on that video, hey Lowko, he's still pretty freaking good, isn't he? For someone who's retired. Guys, here's the thing. Stephano is probably about as retired from StarCraft as I am, which means he probably plays pretty much every single day. I actually just quickly had a quick look at his Twitch VODs, and he streams on Twitch pretty much every single day. Well, not necessarily every single day, but he still plays a heck of a lot. He's still a top contender in Europe. He still travels to offline events. He's pretty much, you know, still a professional gamer. And while I think he's still studying full-time right now too, he is still one of the very best and one of those players who you can definitely not count out. One of the things that I personally really like about Stephano's playstyle is that usually he just sort of tries to do his own thing. He doesn't necessarily seem to follow the meta very much. Obviously he does watch professional events as well, but it's not necessarily immediately gonna determine how he plays as well. So for example, one of the things I've seen him do a lot recently is still playing Hydra Ling Bane, whereas a lot of the other professionals are once again transitioning back to watch, for example, Roach Hydra into Lurker. Right? And that's not necessarily just because it's better or worse or anything along those lines. It's mostly one of those things that just shifts when the meta shifts, when the maps change, and when players just start getting a different preference. Stephano, though, he just sort of plays his own playstyle. One of the things he loves doing as well is play that hyper late game. One of the reasons why he ended up winning a lot of his tournaments back in the day was either because of 2-3 base timing attacks. I remember like the very quick Roach Max, where people had absolutely no clue how to deal with it, in particular in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup. But besides that, he has got one of the greatest, like he's got some of the greatest micro in StarCraft 2. So essentially, I think that might be because of the fact that he used to play Warcraft 3 way back in the day, but essentially he's very good at micro. He doesn't mind playing the late game, and usually if the game does go long, that's where he does shine. Now ShoWTimE on the other end, I mean, we can say many things about ShoWTimE, but there's one thing you need to know. ShoWTimE, for probably like the last 2 years or so, has been considered to be the greatest Protoss player in Europe. Like, period. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that will go against me on that one. I mean, obviously there are other players as well that will maybe shine from time to time, but ShoWTimE is always extremely consistent and very efficient as well. So maybe, you know, that's some of those German roots shining through. But if you want to figure out stable, solid, safe build orders for Protoss, usually you can sort of look at ShoWTimE's strategies, because he doesn't really play, you know, very unorthodox. He doesn't really cheese very often. Usually he will try to play something very standard. For example, one of the things I see very few players do that I you know, help out with StarCraft 2 as well is, for example, send out that very first adept across the map to confirm whether or not there's a third base. And I can guarantee you, in pretty much every single match that ShoWTimE plays, he is definitely gonna send that adept across to figure out if there is indeed a third base. And now that he's indeed figured out exactly what it is the Zerg player is opening up with, and well, it's really nothing all too special here, very standard, he will be able to transition to towards probably a very quick third base as well. Now, we are currently on Backwater, and this may very well be the last match on Backwater that I will cast on YouTube, because, well, maybe, I don't know, I've still got a lot of replays that I want to, you know, try and cast as well. But anyways, not every single cast I do makes it to YouTube. But anyways, Blizzard just announced that this map is indeed going to be eliminated out of the ladder map pool in the next season. We are indeed going to be getting some fresh new maps as well. I'm curious to see how they are going to play out, because they definitely do look a little bit different than the map pool we currently have. I have to say, though, I currently think that the map pool we have in StarCraft 2, so this one right here with Backwater and Blackpink and all that, nice little bit of a depth push in right there, by the way. Two workers end up dying, but the map pool is really good. Now, one of the oracles running very low, and indeed Stephano will get the final kill. One Phoenix poking around over here as well. it is indeed gonna confirm that, well, there's an overlord over on that high ground and that there's really nothing out of the ordinary for our Zerg player just yet. And that's a good thing for ShoWTimE, because he's already decided to take his third base very, very early on into this match. And that's one of the things that I really like about this map pool currently, because basically a lot of pro gamers are forced to switch up their strategies depending on the map they're playing on. This one, of course, features a very easy to take third base for both players. And usually because of this crevice over here, the fourth base is relatively easy to take as well. So, you know, there are a lot of games that do go late, and usually they're going to be on this map or, for example, Neon Violet Square. I don't mind it one bit. I think it's really, really cool, though. Obviously, this is one of those things that, you know, that does favor a certain playstyle over the other. Speaking of playstyles, Stephano actually playing something that is a little bit more or less like old school, I suppose. I mean, this was popular probably like 3 months ago. Looks like he's transitioning to watch Hydraling Bane, judging by the fact that he is indeed getting himself some melee upgrades. Hydraling Bane, of course, very, very strong. There's no particular reason not to play it. It's just that people loved Lurker play in recent days as well. ShoWTimE going for something much more considered to be new school. He decided to go for a quick third base here, and now he's actually morphing in a couple of Archon off of these High Templars. So he's going Stargate into third base, and now into a big push with Archons and potentially Zealots with charge as well. This is definitely one of the strategies that can catch a Zerg player off guard, because ShoWTimE's production is gonna ramp up super quickly at this point. So far though, nice little bit of zoning here by Stephano, really forcing that air-based army as well as that Warp Prism to stay back. And apparently ShoWTimE isn't even going to try a warp in the main base, or maybe even at the third, which I was assuming he would try and do. Instead, he's just simply going to warp in the middle of the map and follow it up with what is likely going to be a pretty quick fourth base as well. Because this doesn't really seem like a build where you're going to go all out and you're going to play very, very aggressive. Obviously, he could still add on a couple of gateways and still play this hyper aggressively, but he's already got a really solid eco. This push doesn't look like it's going to get, you know, anything critical done whatsoever. Got to compliment Stephano right here on his creep spread as well, right? Look at this. I mean, we're only 7 minutes into the game. He hasn't really been harassed very often at all, so that means that ShoWTimE is gonna have to deal with a ton of creep spread. And at this point, it seems like, looks like we had a bit of a pause over there, but it does look like he's gonna rely primarily on revelations in order to get, oh well, never mind. I see the observer right now. I was gonna say, I don't see an observer just yet, but it was indeed hiding in the shadows for me as well as for Stephano. Anyways, I was gonna say, I think he's mostly relying right there on the Oracle for its revelation instead, but no, he is indeed gonna, well, hunt around now with a hit squad of Zealots and really reduce that creep spread. At the same time though, the Warp Prism did manage to make its way into that main base. Beautiful micro there so far by ShoWTimE, not taking any base damage on that Warp Prism whatsoever. And now that these Archons are a little bit bruised up, they're gonna get on out of there to fight another day in just a little bit. Hydra ranged upgrade, the grouped spines is now also coming up here for our Zerg player, whereas in the meantime on the other side of the map, we see ShoWTimE chrono boosting out more and more upgrades, as well as of course the Psionic Storm. He does have a group of High Templar already standing here near his natural location. Bit of a supply block, actually a little bit unorthodox there by ShoWTimE. Not something we would usually see him get, but at this point, I mean, it shouldn't really matter all too much. He's likely going to be looking to take a fourth base here. Now, the fact that he is supply block though, and that he does have quite a lot of resources in the bank is going to hurt him just a little bit. Great first storm there, picking off one of those Banelings almost immediately, and it will indeed force the council there on that Nexus here for the time being as well. ShoWTimE is going to continuously warp in, likely going to maybe get some additional Archon here, or maybe he just wants to get a ton of Storm out. Both options most definitely are viable, but Hydraling Bane here for Stephano, he's really desperately trying to prevent the Protoss from getting that fourth base. Judging by the amount of stuff that's available though here for ShoWTimE, I'm gonna make the assumption that this base is still gonna go up in just a little bit. Now, Centrifugal Hooks as well as +2 is just about to finish, and here we go. Banelings are gonna start rolling forward. They will once again force the council there on that base. Now with the majority of the Banelings gone though, and actually a small pocket of them are still hiding in the back, they will be picked off with some beautifully positioned storms here too, and ShoWTimE forces the Zerg player back here for the time being. But while this was all going on, right, I mean, the fourth base will be retaken here for Protoss. Zerg already has this one up and running, and he's even now looking to take a fifth base as well. So he's taking the approach of always being one base up. Now Protoss moving very deep onto the creep here, not really having a whole lot of vision here to snipe that creep tumor. Great micro so far though here by ShoWTimE, and he's actually getting into the position where he could potentially grab this game already. He does have a a massive amount of units continuously warping in. The amount of zealots is not to be underestimated, but if there's one thing that banelings are very good at, it is indeed dealing with all of those zealots. Storms will not try and force the majority of this army. Baneling trying to move forward to try and kill all of those High Templar as well, but the High Templars live for a little while longer. They will be able to continue charging their Arda Zealots as well, actually. They're going to be able to kill that 5th base. And while it does look like this army eventually will be forced back home as well, a couple of the Zealots are actually coming in from the back. Yeah, mass recall will be forced here by ShoWTimE. So while, you know, both players decided to take out one of their bases, I think there was actually a bit of a drop over here on this side of the map as well. But while both players decided to deal a little bit of damage to each other, for the most part, this was all handled very, very, very nicely. Couple of Archons now continuously morphing in here as well for ShoWTimE, and the 5th base will now be retaken here for Stephano. Now Stephano finally getting himself that Nemesis Carapace upgrade, the Overlord Speed one. That does indicate that he plans on going into the late game, usually, in particular with a Greater Spire morph, right? But usually Zerg at this point is going to sit up to like 80 plus drones, and he's sitting on like 79 at this point. So he's definitely not in a bad spot. But usually Zerg players are going to try and get a ton of income here to eventually transition towards that late game Zerg army based around, for example, Brute Lords, Corruptors, and depending on what the Protoss player is going for as well, maybe something along the lines of Infestors. Now there is a fleet beacon coming up here for ShoWTimE. Once again, by the way, that creep spread is getting out of control. People used to really compliment, in particular, Scarlet on her creep spread for years and years and years, but there's no denying that, you know, players at every single skill level, at the very least, you know, when we're talking professional gamers, right? Obviously, there's like a deviation there in skill level 2. Nicely done, actually. These Zealots will go down, and the Warp Prism too, but at you know, the professional level of StarCraft, we can really expect every single one of the professionals at every single one of their specific skill levels to also be really, really good when it comes to spreading around that creep, because it's quite literally everywhere. I mean, you gotta keep in mind, the Tumors here were sniped in the middle of the map, but these days, Zerg players at this level will have dedicated queens just for creep spread and later on for transfuse as well. Now the fleet beacon is now done. ShoWTimE is going to start up the transition towards initially here Tempest, but I wouldn't be surprised to see carriers in just a little bit too. He wants to try and get about 6 or so, and actually the 5th base will already go down upon seeing that the Zerglings were moving forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if ShoWTimE goes for like 6 Tempest here to make sure that it can really start dealing the damage to the Brute Lords in particular and snipe them off one by one. Now I got myself a little bit of tea. As you may have already noticed by my voice, I do have a bit of a cold. And since we do seem to be in a bit of a lull in this game, it does look like we're actually approaching what is, you know, gonna be a very late game focused army. We see a lot of additional upgrades now coming up here for both players. Really trying to get a lot of, for example, the shield upgrade, right? You don't really see that one very often here for Protoss, unless they're planning to go for that ultimate late game army. So it does look like we are indeed headed towards the supreme late game of StarCraft 2. I mean, both players likely want to try and test the waters in just a little bit once they're once again maxing out, and you can see at the bottom of the screen here that both are just about to hit that 200 supply cap, but there's no denying that this is definitely looking like it is going to be a late game focused army. I'm quite surprised actually that Stephano has allowed ShoWTimE to have this base up and running. He is now going to run forward once again with Zerglings, but there's already plenty of army there waiting for this to deflect it as well. And there's no denying right now, right? ShoWTimE is going to be able to get the army of his dreams. If you are a Protoss player and you get 10 gases up and running, you're a happy Protoss player, because you can quite literally build whatever it is you need. For example, a Dark Shrine. ShoWTimE probably isn't planning on morphing in any Dark Templar right now. He does have a Mothership out already as well, but maybe later on, right? He's gonna be able to make use of some Dark Templar, warp them in, kill a base real quick before they get picked off, because there's no denying they are still an extremely high damage dealing unit. Another Cybernetics core is not even being constructed for ShoWTimE. That is mostly just to make sure that he can start double upgrading his air-based army here too. He knows very well that Stephano is extremely strong defensively. Like, I mean, the positioning on these Spore Crawlers here is not random. He is making it so that basically wherever a War Prism is trying to fly in, it's always going to be hit by one of those units. The Overlord placement here is also pretty much perfect. Look at all of them, right? They are spotting every single one of the high grounds and every single one of the, you know, dead spaces on the map to notice whether or not something is going to be moving out. And while indeed one Phoenix will desperately try its luck to move forward, Stephano is all over that. And that's really what Creep Spread as well as Overlord Spread really allow you to do. It's going to be very difficult here for ShoWTimE to deal any damage. And, I mean, he may try and group all of his units up together, which I do like, but he needs to be extremely careful, because there's no denying that, like, Stephano's micro can most definitely shut this one down. Now, if there's one thing that you can do when you get 80 plus drones, if you are the Zerg player, is get a lot of spores in the Supreme late game. And Spore Crawlers, of course, very good at detecting a lot of units, but also at just simply dealing with that air-based army. That's the reason why ShoWTimE actually got himself a bunch of those Tempest out, not just to make sure that he can deal the damage here to the Brutes, but also so he can really go ahead and deal the damage, lay the hurt there on top of all of those Spore Crawlers. Both players now really looking, though, to take their split side of the map. It's almost as if you could, like, draw a line on the minimap, right, where I'm drawing right now, and, you know, determine which side of the map is going to be from which player. Now, the Immortals, at this point, interestingly enough, become a bit of a nuisance. You really don't want to have them all too long. Stephano apparently not having the base here in the top right-hand corner, even though ShoWTimE was assuming that that one would be the case. And now, these Immortals, they are being sacrificed for ire. They will actually spot a couple of Dropper Lords here from coming in as well. A few other Immortals now trying to snipe one or two of those Infestors before going down against all of those Brutelings. But Zerg indeed is picking off all of those units, and well, apparently while they do get one of those Queens for their troubles, it is not quite enough to really justify that. But ShoWTimE doesn't need the supply. What he does need, though, is defense against this Hydra drop. 16 Hydras are now making their way towards the back of the third base here of the Protoss player. Now, there are already a lot of photo cannons. There's immediately a storm going up here as well. Tempests are moving forward. The Warpin shuts it down, and ShoWTimE will easily be able to pick that one off. I mean, interestingly enough, right, considering how late we are into the game already, 7 workers in total only went down. That's not a lot whatsoever, and if anything, that is really just something to attribute to the skill level of both of these players. Now, ShoWTimE is trying to make a bit of a move forward. This is a very difficult base for a Protoss player to take on this map. The high ground here, usually something you can hold after you've established a bunch of cannons up there too, but this base kind of is far away. Because, for example, if you move your entire army over in that direction, a big drop over at the third base, like for example the one that Stephano did in just a little bit ago, is going to be really, really strong. But on top of that, Zerg can easily make a move in this area with Creep Spread and then move the Spore Crawlers over in this direction as well. War Prism, once again, trying to make a bit of a move forward. Now, ShoWTimE is currently maxed out, so really all he's going to be able to do is drop off a couple of those Zealots. One of them apparently is going to stay into the safety of that War Prism, but Stephano immediately has got a hunt squad right here of a Viper, as well as 2 Overseers, rather, and that group of Corruptors there to try and snipe that Prism. And this is why it's so difficult to play this. Stephano has decided that he wants to take that base in the top right corner here eventually. But one thing that we do know for sure is that this is gonna lead up to one massive clash. And some players love watching this. Or some people love watching this, some players think it's a little bit boring, just because, you know, just because it's obviously not constant aggression. But I think it's really cool to see, because this is like, once again, right, it is a very map-specific thing. This wouldn't really happen very easily on, like, you know, Blackpink Alley, for example, right? That's, you know, that map actually is also being retired, but you know what I mean, right? Like, on Acid Plant, you're not really gonna see a split map scenario like this. Now, ShoWTimE, he knows now that the base in the top right-hand corner is taken. He's making a bit of a move over in that area, bringing over a couple of those Archons, but at the same time, right, while this will send, well, that's actually a lot of Infestor here already, but while that will send a big chunk of the Zerg army towards the top right-hand corner, he also buys a lot of time to indeed secure the base here that will function as the 6th Nexus. And this base is very, very important. He's also buying himself a bunch of time here to really clear out that creep, which I think is absolutely critical. Beautifully done here so far by ShoWTimE, just simply preventing the opponent from getting those Spore Crawlers in position. And while Stephano Stephano looks like he's actually going to make a bit of like a Zerg slow push over towards the third natural and fourth base here of the Protoss player. This is actually starting to become a little bit interesting, because how, like, ShoWTimE is caught out of position right now. How is he gonna possibly deal with this massive amount of infestors? He's gonna get fungled, he's gonna get neuraled, he's gonna be in a lot of trouble. Now, the one Oracle there will cast Revelation on top of all of those infestors, but the Brute Lords are already raining down all of their units from the skies, and they're gonna be able to deal a bunch of damage. Instead, it does look like ShoWTimE doesn't want to go for the engagement. He is gonna go for the, I guess, the flyby instead towards the third base location here of our Zerg player. Killing the spores there already would be quite nice. While indeed the brutes are not being sent home, the majority of the Zerg army, though, is making a move for it. Now, this is a weird angle to engage into. The High Templar trying to sit on that high ground. Beautifully done once again by ShoWTimE. Super dedicated and precise positioning here of his army, right? He knows that the infestors could move forward. He could easily feed back a whole lot of them for practically free. Now, one of the Nexi did end up falling here on the other side of the map. Creep spread looking really strong over here still, though. One queen, once again, dedicating her life to spreading that creep around. The War Prism, in the meantime, on the top right-hand corner will also be going down there, even though a couple of those spine crawlers are bruised up. Everything considered, Stephano ended up losing a base. He ended up killing a base. Everything considered, we are pretty much even here. We are pretty much even. And if anything, even though ShoWTimE ended up losing one of his bases, the scariest part is this position on the map. Because this is one of those one of the positions you can really build out of if you are the Zerg player. Because it's almost as if, like, you put your pieces in the middle of the board. You know, when you play chess, the middle of the board usually is going to provide so much additional control here as well. Spore Crawlers helping out here a ton as well. Here we go. Infested Terrans now even being used here too by Stephano. Not something a lot of players like to do, but since they have got their dedicated anti-air attack, they can deal an awful lot of damage. Couple of zealots now apparently made their way somehow, some way towards this group of spores over here as well, but it does look like we are making ourselves up for one of the more massive engagements of this game, and this could most definitely be game deciding. Stephano trying to make sure that the opponent is always fighting on top of a group of infested Terrans. ShoWTimE a little bit too good for that, though. He just simply picked up a couple of those spores, and then he decided to back off once again, which is really, really smartly done. While this base was indeed taken care of, there's really, like, it's more or less like the Cybercore there. I think it was a lot more painful there for our Protoss, because you can easily retake the Nexus. Both players already have a ton of resources in the bank at this point as well. More and more spores trying to get in position here as well, and Stephano is going to continuously send a couple of units across to really try and lay down the law of the Zerg. ShoWTimE, though, he's found a nice angle here. This is actually really good. The couple of zealots that sort of cleared the way are going to be extremely valuable. Now, one infestor will indeed cast its fungal growth there to really try and slow down the Protoss army there from both advancing as well as retreating. And apparently ShoWTimE indeed is going to be forced to go back home. Where's he mass recalling to? Apparently it is going to be over here in this area. But he is indeed going to be able to deal with his Hydra, of course, with relative ease. But now that he knows that the infestors, the brutes, and the corruptors are out on the map, he can easily teleport back home, use mass recall to his advantage, and pick off a lot of those spore crawlers. So both players really trying to take a little bit of damage. Now, I just need to be careful. Infestors are looking for their fungal growths there. You see that. They almost, you know, were grinning there. They were like, we're ready. We are ready for our fungal growths as well as our neural parasites to take control of that Protoss army. Infestors absolutely critical for Zerg at this point. There are still a lot of them, and it does mean it can continuously push here with these infested Terrans. There we go. One of the yanks of the Vipers is going to be extremely valuable. Still, infestors caught at a bit of a weird angle. A whole lot of them do get picked off there. ShoWTimE backing up very, very nicely, trying to fight off creep here in particular, and more importantly, not on top of all of those spores. Spores are out. They're actually unburrowed right now. They're once again trying to get into position. A couple of the zealots are also warped in now that some of the supply has been freed up here for ShoWTimE. So he's going to be able to deflect that army. And once again, right, he's really starting to get the upper end of these engagements. Still, though, as far as resources lost go, you can see that it's, you know, it's going to go slightly in favor of Zerg. And Zerg obviously has a massive bank here as well. That's not something to forget here either. But there's no denying that this is definitely still a great position for both players. A lot of Zerglings are coming up with the move forward here as well. A couple of Infestors actually get picked off for free, where Zerg is occupied on the other side of the map. There are actually a lot of Brute Lords here. 10 in total, only 11 of those Corruptors. So the majority of the Zerg army is indeed going to be in these Infestors. Zerglings moved across the map. They're going to try and pick off whatever they can on this side over here. And in the meantime, Protoss is really starting to make a move right now to what looks to be the main base and the main tech hub of the Zerg player. Look at that. All of the important tech is located right over here. And once Protoss moves across right, this becomes a very scary army to fight. Because how are you going to engage this if you are a Zerg? Infestors need a lot of space. They need their neuroparasites to be effective. Otherwise, this army is going to absolutely wreak havoc. Hive will be picked off in just a matter of seconds. Another Spire is already being rebuilt here at like the 6th or 7th base here of our Zerg player. Hive falls, Greater Spire falls, +3 attack weapons for air. Did not finish up, actually. That's rather big here as well. Storm will now indeed apparently pick off a couple of those Zerglings here as well. Stephano caught at a very strange angle as ShoWTimE found his way towards both the natural, the third, as well as the main base of our Zerg player. And let's have a look. Mass recall, once again, is off cooldown. I think that's exactly what ShoWTimE is planning to do. Although, if he wants to, he could continue onwards with this harassment for a little while longer. One of the key characteristics of like these level of players is that usually the maxed out armies are going to be like 180 supply at most. Look how many like Zealots are still moving across the map. Look at the amount of Zerglings. They can deal so much damage with just 180 army supply that maxing out with more carriers doesn't make sense at this point. That's something that we haven't really seen in StarCraft 2 until pretty recently. Beautiful high ground usage though. Look at this, right? So ShoWTimE recognized that the majority of the Zerg army is going to be based around the Infestor. So if he's fighting in an area where Spore Crawlers and Infestors can't hit, he's going to be in an absolutely phenomenal position. Picking off a couple of drones, trying to see if he can deal some damage. Still needs to be careful though. Neuroparasite can change the outcome of this battle in just a matter of seconds, and ShoWTimE knows it. Playing this super deliberately, playing this super patiently, playing this super Germany, right? That was an unintentional right there. But anyways, like it's super concise, super precise here as far as his movements go. It's super deliberate. Yeah, this is honestly really difficult to do if you're a Protoss. Usually, if you take one of those engagements, you're like, okay, let's box all of my units forward and try to see if I can test the waters and win the game right here. Instead, ShoWTimE is playing this super patient, and he's just simply trying to poke in and out to try and optimize the amount of damage output that he gets. Gotta keep in mind, he's busy building another one of those motherships as well. The mothership did get picked off there. Vipers were very helpful there, although currently it does look like 0 remain, which is actually a rather big deal. Once again, another hatchery does end up getting picked off, and while Stephano is desperately trying to fight this army, the way that ShoWTimE is engaging this is absolutely superior. A hive is now being rebuilt. I don't know how safe this base is. Actually, only 27 workers, or 26 workers rather, remain here for our Zerg player. And a beautiful neuroparasite there. One of those Archons will indeed kill his own brother, and that does mean that the reinforcing Zerglings will be able to pick this one off. And at any given moment, right, that's the scary part here. Protoss can mass recall and get on out of there. This is like next level playing the maxed out carrier Tempest based style. It's not like, I know some people will look at this and be like, oh my god, that's disgusting, carrier nerf. Honestly, the way he's playing this is it can be game over very quickly. It still can be game over very quickly. One proper group of neuroparasites will be able to pick this up with relative ease. Ooh, once again, a couple of units will be picked off here as well. I think that trade right there, once again, it did go in favor of our Protoss player. Really trying to make sure that none of these carriers overstay their welcome, as the spawning pool as well as the second hive will, well, at the very least, be tried to get picked off. A neuroparasite there will be able to take control of part of this army, and this is what Stephano has been trying to do all this time. So this is very scary, because one of these Tempest, or one of the carriers rather, will be picked off. Another carrier there will also be picked off, and Stephano all of a sudden finding himself some solid engagements. He did get a couple of those carriers for practically free. Right, it's mostly just energy that's being wasted right here on these infested Terrans. Spawning pool though will be picked off here as well by ShoWTimE. And one thing that ShoWTimE has done brilliantly while this is all going on is expand continuously. So he's got the base in the bottom left-hand corner taken. He's taken every single base on this side of the map. One Archon apparently standing its ground over here in this area here too, but there's no denying right now, right, that ShoWTimE successfully pushed the Zerg player back into towards what looks to be a corner, right? Like it's pretty much only 2 bases, and ShoWTimE knows about this too. So for 2 bases to mine out, it will take roughly 15 minutes or so. He's in a phenomenal position right at this point if he just simply contains the Zerg player from taking any, or prevents the Zerg player rather from taking any additional bases. A lair finally will be rebuilt here as well by Stephano. Stephano caught at a very interesting army though. So here's the thing, he's still got a lot of gas. Usually gas is what you need if you're a Zerg, but he's only got 19 drones. So he doesn't get a lot of mineral income here either. But do you really want to spend any more larvae at this point in the game to getting more and more non-army based units? I don't think so. So he's probably going to sit on only 19 drones here and play the Stephano late game. And what I mean with that is that he's simply going to wait. Stephano is not scared to play games that are 1 hour plus long. ShoWTimE really showing us, though, how strong of a player he has become in recent times. Really, playing this super patiently. Honestly, I would have boxed my carriers a half hour ago already. Okay, maybe not a half hour, but probably 10 minutes ago already. And tried to finish off the game. Thing is, these infestors, they are not to be taken lightly, right? So what Stephano is looking to do with these infestors is cast fungal growth on all of the interceptors. The thing is, energy for fungal growth is free. Interceptors are 15 mineral each. They will get picked off rather easily. And if then, of course, you can, for example, take control with Neuroparasite of a couple of those carriers, you are going to be in a phenomenal position if you are the Zerg player. So he's looking to fungal growth as well as Neuroparasite with those infestors. Now, fungal growth can no longer be casted from Burrowed. Otherwise, I think Stephano would have already won this game a little while ago because he would have been able to just pop out of the ground at a moment's notice. I don't know how many observers are still available. There are still 3 of them. Yeah, there are indeed some hanging out with this army. But once again, look, right? Part of this army will be caught out on the map. Infestors move forward almost immediately. They will be able to take control of the majority of this Protoss army. The Protoss army will effectively eradicate itself. ShoWTimE, though, he's going to be able to replace his army almost immediately. This time around, now that he knows he's got the Zerg player contained, he will focus on 5 additional carriers here instead. That's a lot of carriers. I don't actually know exactly where these probes just went down. Wouldn't be surprised if he actually sniped some of his own workers, because at this point, I mean, he's basically... Oh my god, he's taking a 3rd base of the Zerg here. He's basically got all of the money that he needs, right? He's still got a solid amount of minerals. He's still getting a lot of mineral income here as well. All he needs to do is prevent the Zerg player from expanding. I would actually really like to see him make a move towards this base instead. Actually, is he doing that? I thought for a second that the mothership was moving forward to make like an offensive recall towards that side of the map. I honestly think that he really needs to try and take this base out here in the top right-hand corner, although it is a difficult move to make. Now, the mothership, once again, is going forward. ShoWTimE will be able to cast some perfect fungal or sonic storms here. Here we go. Is he gonna mass recall? It'd be so cool. I think that's what he's trying to do. I think that's what he's trying to do. He was trying to bait the Zerg army towards the left-hand side of the map. They used the mothership to offensively mass recall all of the units towards the top right-hand corner instead. Now, mothership will try to recall itself. Will not be able to do so because the corruptor damage is just a little bit too strong here, even though they do not have their +3 attack upgrade. Actually, I do think it's rather important for Stephano to try and get that +3 upgrade, even though, it was cancelled a couple of times already. There we go. It's almost as if he could hear me from the past. He decides to start up the +3 flyer attack weapons upgrade as well. That one is going to take a little while to finish, but ShoWTimE, once again, showing us his German efficiency right now. He's taking his sweet time, playing this super smartly and super patiently. It's actually pretty funny. I always thought that German efficiency was one of those things that was mostly just meant as sort of like a joke, but it's really not the case. Honestly, I've had to like, email people from Germany, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's absolutely great. Like, if you do any kind of business with people from Germany, one thing I've noticed is that they are extremely efficient with the work they deliver as well as the way they communicate. For example, I remember when I started adding like nicknames of active patrons to my end credits on YouTube, right? It's one of the Patreon rewards for those of you curious. That's patreon.com/LowkoTV. But I sent an email to all of the patrons that were indeed eligible for that. We are actually making ourselves up for what looks to be an engagement. Little bit of a scary back and forth here, but I sent out an email asking what name the active patrons wanted to have in their in the end credits, and every single one of the emails that I got back from people from Germany, right, were usually just like their name, just the name that they wanted to have as part of their end credits, which I thought was absolutely hilarious and really is proof of the German efficiency. I mean, I essentially sent an email asking if people wanted to give me the name that they wanted to include in the end credits, and all I got back was the information that I was asking for, right? Not like, hey Lowko, how nice of you to like email us, it's very helpful that, you know, you're doing this. And that's usually what you do get from people, for example, from the United States, which is obviously a different kind of thing entirely. But here we go. ShoWTimE finally making a bit of a move here towards the top right hand corner. He will be able to snipe that base, and I actually think this is absolutely critical because there's no denying that, you know, he needs to try and prevent this Zerg player from getting this base up, right? Like, just simply denying the Zerg player economy is going to be critical. And ShoWTimE is effectively doing that right now by just simply sending his army units across the map. Still trying to fight back and forth, though. Trying to find a bit of an angle. He successfully managed to pick off a couple more of those crawlers, and now that the infested Terrans are running out, he will try to go back in. Ooh, a couple of the units are actually target firing down those infestors as well. Keep in mind, there's still a massive bank here for our German Protoss player. Once again, showing us his effectiveness as he just simply pokes in and out whenever he has any interceptors available, and really trying to get rid of that static defense, knowing very well that he is slowly but surely bleeding the Zerg player dry. Still, I am not counting Stephano out of this just yet. Stephano's army is not maxed out, but it's extremely potent. It's got the best upgrades in the game, and it can still most definitely deal with this maxed out Protoss army at a moment's notice. Finally, these oracles will be picked off. 2 new ones immediately do get created, though. ShoWTimE recognizing the worth there of the Revelation spell. But once again, right, showing us his German efficiency. It's so funny, though. Obviously, like, there's different styles to every country, right? And it's definitely one of those cultural-based things. But I always just thought that was mostly just a joke people made. But no. People from Germany, very, very efficient. If you ask for a certain amount of information, they will provide you that information. And usually nothing more than you ask for, which is great. It's honestly super, super nice to do that. Once again, this carrier army is moving forward towards the top right-hand corner of the map. It picks up another base, and while we are rapidly approaching the 40-minute mark, right, Stephano, he's still stuck on the bases that he's got. I don't know how much longer this game is gonna run for. I mean, ShoWTimE is desperately trying to get, you know, this player out of the game. But Stephano, I mean, like I said, he's not scared to play this. He's won many games from this position in the past. ShoWTimE very good. He knows how strong Stephano is in this scenario too, though. And he knows that this can still be game over at any given moment. So once again, it's all about bleeding the Zerg player out of resources, preventing it from expanding. Now, ShoWTimE, by the way, is starting to mine out himself as well. I mean, the 6th base at this point is out of resources. There are actually, like, oh my god, this map is almost mined out. Are you kidding me? I did not quite realize that. I was thinking that ShoWTimE was in a phenomenal position to take this. And don't get me wrong, he's still in a really good spot. He just started up a whole bunch of carriers and then also a few Void Rays. But the Void Rays are a sign that he is a little bit worried about this too. I mean, he is gonna eventually run out of interceptors. Keep in mind, interceptors are 15 minerals each, whereas infested Terrans are energy-based and completely free. Even though Stephano doesn't have a massive economy and there are still some mineral patches on his side of the map, the majority of the mineral patches are starting to run low, and ShoWTimE's income is soon gonna be diminished to pretty much 0 here as well. And this is why Stephano isn't GGing out. Some of you may look at this and be like, oh my god, that's almost a little bit bad-mannered here by Stephano. No, Stephano legitimately, you know, knows he's still got a chance. Right? A couple of probes will not even be picked off here as well. That is once more on purpose to open up more supply to create more and more army-based units. Like, for example, that War Prism here. Denying that creep spread here, once again, is ShoWTimE. but a couple of interceptors will be picked off there too, and obviously creep threat, once again, an energy-based skill, will put the Zerg in a better and better position. The more interceptors do get sniped, the better this is going to be. Now, don't get me wrong, though. ShoWTimE is still in a very, very strong position. It looks like he finally may actually be moving in for what is looking like the kill. Still, you don't want to engage on top of those spores. There aren't that many of them, but the spore crawlers definitely can dish out their fair share of damage. One Zergling taking control of that watchtower, really allowing Zerg to see exactly what's going on. Obviously, another benefit on fighting on top of those spores is going to be the vision that it does provide to make sure you can see all of those cloak units from the mothership. Still, beautifully done here. Eventually, the spore crawlers will be picked off. And it does look like the interceptors will once again start flying forward. Now, Psionic Storm still going to be super important. Keeping a couple of those infestors, you know, at bay is super critical here. The fact that these High Templar are dealing as much damage as they do to the infested Terrans is super, super nicely done. Still, though, gotta be careful. Viper trying to move forward, getting the feedback on the Viper right there is ShoWTimE. He's once again gonna land Psionic Storm on top of as many of those infested Terrans as he can in the process, though also killing a lot of his own interceptors. Carriers desperately trying to rebuild their interceptors. They are very, very low. Infestors finally starting to get a little bit of value here with their infested Terran spam. Infestors, though, also starting to run a little bit low here on the energy count. And here we go. Stephano trying to make this with a last-ditch effort. He is actually capable of taking control of the majority of this Protoss army. He's neuroparasiting pretty much every single one of those carriers. The infested Terrans in the ground still dealing a lot of damage here as well. ShoWTimE trying to move the mothership forward to prevent this Protoss army from falling. Neuroparasite, though, does eventually run out, and ShoWTimE, while he is forced to warp in a lot of Stalkers, I think that ShoWTimE has just barely been able to do this. Oh my god. No way, this is what ShoWTimE was worried for the entire time. Stephano, oh my god. If anything, right? For those of you thinking that that was a little bit BM by Stephano to stay in the game, this is why he did that. The only reason why he ended up losing here is because he's going up against ShoWTimE. Like one of the greatest Protoss players on the planet, period. That was absolutely phenomenally played there, and even though Stephano ended up losing there, I do think we have to credit him appropriately because he definitely stuck in that game and microed that final engagement as good as he could have. While ShoWTimE, though, showing us how powerful of a player he is and how, I guess, how patient he is as well, right? Because once again, it would have been easy to just box all of the units together and try and close out the game much sooner. And that's probably what the vast majority of players, including myself, would have done there. But Stephano showing us exactly how good of a player he is and that you can never really count him out. ShoWTimE ends up winning this game. Beautifully played. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day, okay? Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one.